We are a nonpartisan group who is interested in everybody participating in the election process, which is what makes our democracy work. So we've got a wonderful crowd. We're happy to see you. We have, the way it will work is that you submit questions. We have cards back there and pencils. We have four high school students, Hershey High School, who will collect your questions. So if you have any, just raise your hand. Now, I'll leave it to George Porter to introduce the rest. He's our moderator.
Hi. That concludes my remarks. I'd like to introduce you to Susan Cort and Marc Moyer and Steve Todd and Sandy Ballard, who are our participants tonight. And I've just been handed a packet of index cards. Elvira, what did you want me to do with these?
Ask the questions.
Okay.
Very good.
And should I circulate them to Steve and Sandy also?
Everybody gets a chance to answer every question.
Okay. All right.
With a time on it.
So as I understand that the rule is that I ask every participant the same question, and I rotate who answers the question first.
Yeah.
And has there been any determination who goes first? Or just,
That's up to you.
Okay.
You're the big judge.
I'll go alphabetically then.
And this is
I'll start with Sandy, and then we'll just rotate this way. I don't think I could handle the complexity of it.
And then do we have an intro too?
What was the question?
Is there a time for an introduction at this point, Elvira?
He's going to tell you on your sheet. There, yeah, 2 minutes.
Oh, all right.
Okay. What we'll do now is we'll have an introduction. Each person is allowed 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we'll go to the question session. Sandy, would you please start?
Thanks, George. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to see such a wonderful turnout, and I look forward to our discussions tonight. A special welcome and thank you to my husband and his parents for all their love and support. I'd also like to thank all the hardworking Ballard volunteers out there in the audience. And finally, a big thanks to the volunteers from the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. I believe I'm well qualified to serve another term as your supervisor due to my public policy and education and my commitment to public service, my passion for transparency, and my leadership in more effective future land use planning and traffic management. I'd like to serve another term as your supervisor to complete some of the projects we started and to continue to be a vocal advocate for residents. Upcoming decisions will involve 4 key issues that I hope we can discuss in more detail tonight. First, land use, including real estate development and the resulting traffic, is the biggest issue we face, and the reason I became involved in local government. Even before becoming a supervisor in 2010, I had been a vocal advocate for smarter growth management. For example, back in 2002, I spoke passionately against rezoning the Sheets land. The second issue our township faces is taxes, financing, and debt. Currently, we have several large employers and a fairly good credit rating. However, other municipalities have fallen from high places due to an inordinate debt or risky ventures. We need to be cautious. Third, we need to do more to support seniors, our most valuable residents. And I invite you to join us at our town hall meeting October 28th to learn how to better serve residents in our community. And the final issue is increased transparency, which will result in better decision-making in all areas. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your questions.
Susan.
Thanks, George. Good evening, everybody. My name is Susan Cort. I would like to help serve and guide the future of Derry Township as your next supervisor. When I announced my candidacy about a year ago, people people started asking me the same question, why in the world are you doing this? And the answer for me is very simple. It's because it's the best way that I know how to serve our community. I'm a proud 28-year resident of Derry Township. I raised my children here, and I've been heavily invested in our community for over 25 years. I've helped lead the Hershey Area Playhouse, New Year's Eve in Hershey, the Hershey Symphony Orchestra, the Hershey Derry Township Historical Society, and most recently, in the last 2 years, I've helped drive downtown revitalization as the chairperson of the Downtown Hershey Association. I also serve as the Hershey Rotary Club leader and take their motto of service above self to heart every day. As I look around the room, I see a lot of people that I've worked with over the last 25 years, and I think they would all pretty much say the same thing. I'm a hard worker, I'm respectful of people's opinions, I'm a good communicator, I seek to get consensus, but I also stand up for what I believe in every day. I've been prepared to step into supervisor for 2 years now as the vacancy board chair, or supervisor understudy, if you will. And I've also spent the last year doing research, talking to township officials, county and state officials to understand how all the pieces of our township come together. I've also served as a communications consultant for the township, helping to increase the frequency of our communications to make sure that our residents are better informed. When elected, my priorities include coming up with a strategic long-term transportation plan to make sure we have better road infrastructure, and also coming up with a zoning plan to support our new comprehensive plan. The decisions made in our township in the next several years are going to be critical and long-lasting ones, and I want to be the person that represents the residents. I want to be your eyes and your ears. I want to ask the questions that you're going to ask, and then I want to affect positive change. I thank you for listening, and thank you also for your support.
Marc?
Thank you, George, and I'd like to thank my wife, Susan, who's here, for your guidance and support, as well as Kelly Fidelli, who has offered me valuable guidance and support as well. You know, public service has always been extremely important to me, and it was that interest in the form of serving my country in uniform that led me to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point and to serve in the United States Army as an aviator before leaving military service as a captain. My military service has instilled a sense of discipline and has taught me to tackle issues directly with a sense of purpose and a sense of focus. It's also broadened my perspective in a lot of ways by allowing me to serve with people from all over the country, from every socio-economic background towards achieving a common goal. After military service, I attended law school at Northwestern University and the University of Pennsylvania Schools of Law, and have been a practicing attorney since 1995. As a litigator, I've handled a broad range of cases ranging from commercial disputes to medical malpractice defense. That breadth of experience on such a wide variety of topics enables me to draw upon a large number of disciplines when addressing the many issues that are coming before the board. My background and experience has also enabled me to develop a skill set centered upon the ability to identify relevant issues and facts and to evaluate them objectively. I have also learned to ask the right questions, and perhaps equally important is to demand the right answers before making important decisions regarding the issues facing our township. I also have no conflicts of interest, and I'm free from outside influence. I've been involved in updating our library's strategic plan and modernizing our library's technology on the library board. I've helped expand and improve our walking trails and parks, and I'm involved in plans to modernize our recreation center while on the Parks and Recreation Board. And I serve on the TIF committee and a supervisor liaison of the school board. In short, I have a 6-year track record of placing the needs of Derry Township first and foremost in all decision making. And I respectfully ask for the opportunity to keep these initiatives alive through re-election. Thank you very much.
And Steve?
Thank you, George, and thank you to the League of Women Voters once again for having this forum. It's very important, and I know many municipalities don't have this privilege to sit down and look at all the candidates on the same stage. They have to seek information one at a time. My name is Steve Todd. I've been seeking an office here as supervisor, and I would like your support. I've lived here in Derry since 2000. My wife Janine and I moved here then, and we adopted our son Derek in 2002, and he attends Derry schools. That was one of the main reasons we moved here, among many, many other good reasons. I have served as a professional civil engineer specializing in municipal fields for almost 20 years, 19 now, including over 3 of those years serving as the consultant to working for a consultant who was the township engineer at the time. I've also worked previously with the engineer who is currently the engineer at the time. I was a co-founder with Sandy Ballard of the Derry Environmental Action Committee, where I served as chair for 2 years, or maybe a little more than that. I helped co-write our stormwater ordinance with a bipartisan panel that really worked together, and everybody gave a little and got a little, and I think we came up with a good solid ordinance. I also worked for the Hummelstown Sun, and proud to have been there for like 6 years, and I, of course, do not cover dairy topics, but I thought I'd do that. Oh, okay, I'm running low on time. I am definitely the candidate here who has the most uphill battle. There's 2 incumbents seeking to keep their seats, and there's 2 Republicans in a Republican majority township. So what do I have to offer you? Several things. Definite leadership. I am the only candidate on the stage, I believe, as of what I read recently, to take a position on the TIF, and I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
We'll now go to the question session of this meeting, and Elvira, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm going to ask, I will ask each candidate the same question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and Dale will hold up a yellow sign when there are 15 seconds remaining, so kindly abide by his signals. And we'll start out with Sandy. This question is titled Conflict of Interest, and the question reads as follows. Potentially, we could have 3 supervisors on the Downtown Hershey Association board. Is this a conflict of interest since the board gives recommendations to the supervisors to vote on? Sandy, would you answer that?
Thank you. I am delighted to answer that question. I think it's wonderful the work that the Downtown Hershey Association has been pursuing. I've been a volunteer on many of the events. At the farmer's market, I'd like to volunteer at the info booth, and I enjoy talking to everyone that comes in and telling them about the different events going on. I think it is, I'm not clear that would be a technical conflict of interest, but I think it helps us to have a wider variety of people on the board so that we get a wider variety of information and feedback, dialogue about decision making, so that there's not any too much concentration of any one type of individual on the board. So I don't know that it's actually technically, for legal purposes, a conflict of interest, but I would encourage broad participation as Board of Supervisors.
Susan?
Thanks, George. I agree with Sandy because it's not a conflict of interest, but we really strive on the Downtown Hershey Association to have a diverse board, and that's what makes it so effective. It's really a collaborative group representative of the entire community. We've got 25 board members, and they represent local government officials, big business, small business, average citizens, and I think that's what makes it so effective. So proactively looking ahead to next year, we've already discussed the possibility that there could be 3 current board members, myself, Justin, and John, who could potentially be supervisors, and that while that wouldn't be a conflict, that in order to maintain our diverse board, one of us would step down off the board and probably continue to volunteer because the 3 of us, as I know Sandy and Marc would agree, really believe in what we're doing in the Downtown Hershey Association board. So not a conflict, but certainly we would continue to maintain a diverse board, and we're always looking for volunteers and new board members and new committee members, so there's my plug, see me afterward if you'd like to participate, go to downtownhershey.com. So not a conflict, we always live to have a diverse board.
Marc?
George, that's a very interesting question. I want to remind everybody that the Downtown Hershey Association is, in fact, an advisory board to the board supervisors. That role was highlighted most recently during an ordinance issue in which Chocolate Fest was brought up, and it was made very clear that at Downtown Hershey Association is an advisory board to board supervisors. I think it's an interesting question because when the Downtown Hershey Association was formed, I made a very deliberate decision to not serve on the Downtown Hershey Association for that very reason. Because we do want to encourage community involvement, diversity, and maximize participation. And so I personally believe that a maximum of 2 supervisors should be on the board, and I actually stepped out from that for that very reason.
Thank you. I don't see it as technically a conflict either. However, it would be one that could bring to mind, it could bring one pause, and I do think Susan's solution would be a fair one should that come about. As long as we don't have a quorum of it on the same board, it's fine. But what it does bring up is one of my platform planks that I didn't quite get to, that I propose looking into a wards-based representation system. Derry Township has simply grown fast and incredibly diverse. There are so many spread out, far-reaching, different population centers across Derry. There may have been a time when Hershey was considered what we kind of call the village now, and that was it. That those days are long gone, and I'd like to see a certain supervisor from each population center around the township, as opposed to the at-large system we have now, which could theoretically lead to all the supervisors coming from one neighborhood. We're lucky now that's not a problem, but I'd like to propose that.
The second question, I'll ask Susan to answer first, and I'll read it to you, Susan. It says, it's actually addressed to you, Susan, so it's fortuitous that you get to answer it first. You say you will alleviate traffic in areas, but you have done just the opposite by having events downtown. It's only created traffic and parking problems and neighborhood discontent. Example is the art show, the farmers market, concerts, and chocolate fest. Let me see if I can make a question out of that. Well, maybe just comment on it.
Sure. Thanks for the question, Lee. I've talked to Lee, who's a downtown resident, multiple times and addressed his concerns, and every time Lee sent me a message or asked me to comment, I responded to him and actually thanked him for his initial concern, because when we first started the farmers market, we didn't have it quite down in terms of how to direct the traffic for post office versus people visiting the farmers market, and we did make that adjustment. But I have to tell you, there are 24,000 other people in the township that are delighted that we're breathing new energy into the downtown. We've got a farmers market every Saturday that ran May through October. We've got a monthly concert series that ran May through October. We had an arts festival that drew about 10,000 people and built up our economy on one day in May. We've just had a very successful fall event last weekend called Chalktoberfest. And we have ample parking downtown. We're very blessed in this town to have parking garages and lots of off-street parking. So I would rather celebrate the resurgence and the renaissance in downtown. And certainly if anybody has any concerns about parking, they can certainly come see me or any of the supervisors or anybody on the board of the Downtown Hershey Association, because it has brought a lot of new life to downtown. Thank you.
Marc?
I'll venture forth, even though it wasn't directed to me. I echo a lot of the sentiments from Susan in that regard. Traffic in downtown Hershey is a very vexing problem. And we do need to come up with very creative solutions on how to arrive at that. And some of the solutions proposed in terms of the downtown revitalization include additional parking, not only parking garage parking, but off-street parking as well. And it's my hope that we as a community can work together to solve that issue while simultaneously creating a vibrant downtown that all of us can enjoy and want to go downtown to enjoy, but at the same time make sure that we've addressed the traffic issue to not impede our use and enjoyment of downtown.
Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, traffic downtown, as with everywhere where there's rapid growth, such as Derry has seen over the past 20 years at least, is always one of the more vexing problems for any type of planning situation. I know because I'm a civil engineer, I've worked hand in hand with planners, landscape architects and such over projects, and without exception, that's when you have a boom of population, such as Derry has, without exception, that's going to happen. So I applaud the Downtown Hershey Association and all the efforts they put forth. We have a wonderful farmers market out in the Sand Hill area where I live, and I know we enjoy it. I'm sure that the downtown folks get much benefit from theirs. One of my main concerns when Chipotle was going on, and people were talking about this or that with Chipotle, really I had no problem with it except for the traffic. I didn't think and still don't think that downtown is set up to handle what we're calling fast casual now, basically fast food. I have worked in the past with our current planner, who's on staff, Lauren Zumbra, and I've also worked with the firm, Durkin Edson, who's doing the bulk of the comp plan.
Jen?
Thank you, George. I believe that our land use policies and real estate development and the resulting traffic is indeed one of the biggest issues we have to face going forward. Our township has indeed grown and prospered over the years. Our infrastructure, not so much. We have to do a better job balancing those two so that our infrastructure can handle the development that has already happened. For the downtown in particular, I think we need to be sensitive to the neighborhoods in the downtown. We need to consider the residents that live in the downtown area and make sure that their needs are addressed, as well as the folks coming into the downtown for the wonderful events, the fun Choptoberfest and concerts that we have downtown now. And again, I volunteer at many of those events and I enjoy them myself. But believe me, every time I get on the bus in the morning, one of my friends, Steve, will mention how the traffic has affected him on Granada Avenue. So I appreciate that concern.
The next question is entitled Bond Rating and Gym, and I'm going to summarize it just a little bit. It starts out with a statement: the Derry Township Supervisors lost approximately $800,000 of taxpayer money on the Granada Gym, and the Derry Township bond rating dropped. The questions posed that I'd like the four of you to address are: why was this allowed to happen? And also, how can it be prevented in the future?
Well, I wouldn't say that we lost $800,000. The aggregate amount, I'm assuming that refers to between the school district and the township, represents cost to operate Granada Gym as well as debt service on that by both the school district and by the township. We inherited, at least the current board has inherited the situation in terms of having to manage the Granada Gym with those facts. And we, for years, have attempted to find a solution on how to resolve this issue and to negate the debt service payments that we had. And the recent decision to change management in Granada Gym was the result of someone coming forward with a solution to that. And hopefully the problem has rectified itself and will not repeat itself in the future.
Steve?
Thank you. I was, of course, not on the board, so I had nothing to do with the Granada Gym situation. I don't know that I oppose anything the supervisors did given the situation they were in. What we could do to keep recurring financial challenges from coming up is simple, and it's something I've proposed for years. Watch what you spend. Spend carefully. Spend like you would spend your money to buy a loaf of bread or a car. How is that? Well, we award a lot of our professional services, as do most municipalities, I believe all counties in Pennsylvania, except Philly, on a no bid, no peer review basis. What do I mean by that? I mean they go to one firm for things like legal, engineering, accounting. There's a certain very few that are exempt from this situation. And I think it's insane, and I think we stop here, and I think that would help strengthen any bond rating problems that we would have through us relatively small things such as liquor on a gym.
Sandy?
Thank you, George. As I had mentioned, I believe taxes, financing, and debt is the second big issue that we really need to face going forward. We are tremendously blessed to have a diverse range of revenue sources in our community, but no one expected 2008 to happen. Other municipalities have run into problems with bond financing and other ventures. So we need to be cautious, and I am a very fiscally conservative person. My husband and I are very frugal with our own budget and very cautious with debt. I think being cautious is even more important with taxpayer dollars. And finally, as to the question of how to avoid this in the future, I recommend a blue ribbon budget committee to carefully review the township's budget each year and identify possible cost savings without compromising services. We have very intelligent residents in our community, and we can tap into those resources and use those volunteers to help us do better going forward.
Susan?
Thanks, George. I'm going to take them in two pieces. First, the gym. How did this happen and how did it go on so long? I believe that the supervisors did what they thought was in the best interest of the community in keeping the Granada Avenue gym going from 2002 until now, because it is a service much like most of the other amenities that we really enjoy in this township. But clearly, over the years, the debt service and the operating expenses got to be too much. And when an opportunity came in for another commercial entity to run a gym and actually provide what we believe are better services for the residents and alleviate that debt for the school district and the township, well, that was smart action on their behalf, so I applaud them for that. In terms of the debt or the bond rating, our rating did slip from AA+ to AA, which I don't know that that's a red flag, but it's certainly a yellow flag. And I think it would be something that all of us should just take caution and make sure that we continue to be very good stewards of the money that we spend in this township. The ICBA is really a pass-through for a lot of that debt, so while it shows on the books that we have all this debt, it really isn't all that debt. So that drop in the bond rating really isn't as telling of a story as you might think. So I think just to continue to be good stewards of our money is the best action.
The next card has 3 questions, and I'll just ask the first one. I believe this is about the TIF. And Steve, the question is, if elected, would you vote for the TIF?
Is that the only part of the question you're going to ask?
It is.
The whole card's filled with Would I vote for the TIF as of right now, as of what I know about it? Absolutely not. I see it as another giveaway, if you will, to people that perhaps don't need as much from the backs of everybody else who would have to, no matter which scenario. I've been in a few of these TIF meetings, I haven't been to all of them. They shuffle different scenarios around. Bottom line is, you and I will certainly, in any of the scenarios, pay more, or somehow there'll be a deficit for 18 to 20 years, depending on which one you pick. Then maybe we'll make more money than we might have. But what they don't mention is we would have made more anyway, assuming that that area will be developed. That gets into the whole notion of blight. Do we use TIF money to prevent blight? At the Square of Cocoa and Chocolate in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I can barely think of that with a straight face. I think it's insulting to suggest so.
Sandy?
Thank you, George. I also have several concerns and questions about the proposed tax increment financing. I think the issue requires much more public discussion to ensure possible downtown tax increment financing does not divert resources from our schools, which would have to participate, the township and the Middletown Road transportation improvements that are also desperately needed, and other improvements needed across the township. So it's important the money is not diverted from other needs. I haven't, on the other hand, ruled out any possible support of a TIF of some amount. However, I believe the public deserves more information before any decisions are made. I also hope we will consider other options involved for developing downtown, including asking property owners who own land in that property to contribute toward the improvements.
Susan?
This takes much more than a minute, but I'll do my best. It's impossible for any of us to say tonight if we would vote for the TIF because we don't know what the TIF is. There is not a one-size-fits-all TIF, and any TIF that would be passed in Derry Township will be one that the public will be involved in, that it would be determined by all of the voting or the taxing bodies, both the school district, the township, and the county, and it is not tax abatement. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I would really implore you to do some research. It is but one of many investment tools that will help drive economic growth. And it's not tax abatement. So if you have a property that is reassessed, it's that tax increment, that differential, that can then be reinvested into the community. It doesn't have to be that property. So something in the downtown district that could be a TIF project could help benefit us in other ways by putting in sidewalks, improving the streetscape downtown. And it's just one tool that we have to consider. Consider it like a home equity loan that we may tap into or we may not. So it's definitely something we have to consider. The public has been part of this whole process, and I really applaud everybody on the committee for all their hard work. It's going to be months and months of research before we know what we even have as a possibility for our TIF.
Marc?
Be wary of the person at this stage in the proceedings that tells you they are either for or against the TIF. We have not gotten all of the information yet. We are actually in the heart of the process of obtaining the information. We still are refining projected figures, addressing anticipated square footage of the projects. We're still working on employment projections, job creation numbers. We're looking at local service tax projections, occupational tax projections, total cost projections. These are all numbers and figures that are still being evaluated in this very complex issue. To say that this would address blight is a defined term under the Act, and to suggest that blight necessarily means boarded up buildings reflects a profound lack of understanding as to what the Act entails. Bottom line is it's premature, and the whole purpose of this process is to ensure that we make informed decisions about this important issue.
This question starts with a premise, but it does ask a question. There is very little for the children as far as recreation during the midsummer months. Do you support upgrading the rec center as a priority in the comprehensive plan? And I believe we're at TUC. No, I'm sorry, it's TUC. You're first. Okay. Did I pass you by on the last question?
No, I went first.
Okay.
Well, I'll go, whatever.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. I do support the efforts that are ongoing to update our recreational center. I think it's important that the recreational center, which has been around for a long time. I actually live right across the street, and it is always amazing to see the pool open where it slides open every summer. And it's a wonderful treasure to see that, but frankly, it's getting old, and it's falling apart. And it's getting moldy, and you know, the pipes are rusting and everything else with an old building. I love that building dearly, but we need to replace it. And I think it has to be useful for everyone, for every age, and that a variety of uses would be available at that one centralized location. So I do support offering more activities for children and senior citizens, children of every age in our community.
Susan?
Thanks, George. I think we're very blessed to live in Derry Township. We've got miles and miles and miles of bike paths and walking paths, and we've got a recreation center that is aging. It's over 40 years old now, so it is in dire need of being updated, and it will be. That's definitely on the horizon and something we can all look forward to. I would say as much as we could as supervisors encourage there to be more recreational opportunities, more programming for our kids and people of all ages. I think that's great. And I think just informing our residents about all there is to do, even outside of the auspices of the township. If you think about the programs that are offered by our community theater and by our symphony and all the other wonderful gems in our community, there's an awful lot going on in Hershey. I grew up outside of Manhattan, and I gotta tell you, there's a lot going on in Hershey. So I think the more we can support that, the better, and certainly looking to improve our recreation center would be something that I would wholeheartedly support.
I wholeheartedly support evaluating the possibility of upgrading our rec center. So much so that as a member of the Parks and Rec Committee, I was involved with recently retaining a consultant for that very purpose. And we have retained a consultant to explore the possibility of updating our recreation center. I envision that in the very near future, we are going to convene a committee outreach, a community outreach, have stakeholder meetings, have interviews, have town hall meetings on what we want to see as a community. And all of us, whether they be seniors, older adults, or children, everyone's going to be encouraged to participate in that, so we as a community can voice our desires as to what we see. We're then going to develop a plan of action and possible options for that, and then we're going to present it to the people as well for final determination and for prioritizing that. So I think it's a wonderful idea. It's a time that has come, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Steve?
My son grew up playing on the downtown, and we've used many of the rec center's facilities. We took karate lessons there and swam there. And yes, we should keep that as part of our overall comprehensive plan, but remember it says comprehensive plan. So if we have a population center that's in or around where the rec center is, well, perhaps proportional development or proportional recreation facilities would go in other population centers of Derry Township, and that's where my proposal for wards comes in. We would each have a supervisor up here from our area, guaranteed, and then we say, wait a minute, let's put something over here. Instead of, as things are often proposed, it invariably seems like somebody comes in at the last minute with, what about this over in our area? Well, then it's sort of too late, because those decisions need to be made up front in the preliminary cost estimating of these projects. As a civil engineer, I have much experience with cost estimating and forecasting future values of the present worth of situations like this. So yes.
The next question is very general, and we'll start with Susan. Susan, it says, what will your priorities be if you are elected?
Thank you, George. There are a number of priorities that I would like to address. Most importantly would be creating a long-term strategic plan for our road infrastructure to make sure that we can get from point A to point B more quickly and also more safely. We can't continue to build in our township without looking at our roads. And I know there's a lot of good work that's happening already, but certainly we want to make sure that that's top of mind. We want to take a look at some of the areas that really need extra help, including Middletown Road. If you look at all the development that's happening out there, we really need to pay attention to what the needs are of those residents to make sure that the growth that's happening is meaningful to the people who not just live out there, but anybody who travels along the Middletown Road corridor. So really development and traffic management are two of the top priorities. And personally, I would like to try to improve board health and communication so that the supervisors communicate better with each other and communicate with the public better so that we can all be involved in moving our township forward, making it great like we all want it to be.
Marc?
I have three priorities. First and foremost is land use and development and infrastructure improvements associated with land use and development, particularly road infrastructure. We cannot overdevelop undeveloped land in Derry Township and hope to maintain the character of our community or the quality of our life. It's very important that we look at areas of prospective development and make sure that we have the infrastructure to support that before we conduct any rezoning. Secondly, I'm concerned about the responsible financing of downtown Hershey. Again, touching upon the TIF issue, we need to make sure that our efforts do not pose risk to our taxpayers. And thirdly, I'm concerned about, and I think the priority is possible regionalization of our police department. We cannot compromise the scope of coverage and the quality of police service that we currently have in Derry Township for a modest cost savings.
Steve?
Thank you. One of my priorities, first and foremost, my reason for getting into this race, as I did in 2013 and as I ran a write-in on 2011 to try and get into this office, is to put an end to our no-bid contracts. They are very wasteful of our funds, and if you could see the differences that come from professional services when they are let out to bid, and if you could see, as I have on the inside of these bigger corporate firms, when they know things are going to be bid, how they put their prices together, as opposed to when they know it's just a municipal giveaway, if you will. I had mentioned my wards-based representation. That's something I think it's time for Derry to push for. We watched Waterra overthrow theirs last year. Within 1 year, they're having an election now. There's 6 candidates for that seat. 5 of them have pledged to restore their wards, not even a year after they got rid of them. Only one is standing firm on keeping the at-large representation.
And Sandy?
Thanks, George. My 4 priorities are land use, real estate development, and the resulting traffic. And again, we have developed quite rapidly, but our infrastructure has not kept pace. We need to adjust that so that everyone can move through the towns, through and within the township safely. Our land use policy for too long has been reactive. In other words, a developer would come in with a plan to the supervisors and we would react. Rather, I think we need to be proactive, and the residents, not developers, should decide what's best for the community. That's why one of the first things I did was, when I was elected, was to draft the motion that Mike Priest proposed to update our comp plan with smart growth principles. The other important issue is doing better to support our seniors in our community. Seniors are our most valuable residents, and we need to do more to support them. Finally, the transparency, getting more information out to the community.
The next card is also, thank you. The next card is also titled Priorities, and it says, for the incumbents, name one project that you championed and brought to fruition in the 6 years that you have served on the Board of Supervisors. And if you are not an incumbent, name one project you will champion. Marc?
Well, I think that commensurate with my first priority is the attention that has been brought to land use and development and the need to improve our infrastructure. Not only throughout all parts of the township, but also in particular along Middletown Road. We formed the Middletown Road Coalition. It's a very vital corridor of our township. It needs special attention due to external factors which have affected our township, and it is a vital corridor, as is many of our roads throughout Derry Township. So I think my best service, most recent service, has been to heighten the awareness of the need to preserve and protect open space, as well as infrastructure, highlight the need for infrastructure improvements.
Steve?
Well, I'm not an incumbent, but a project I was involved in when I was working for the township engineers, I did all the civil engineering, design, and permitting for this very site we sit on tonight. Everything outside the walls, that's what a civil engineer does, the parking, the water, the sewer, storm sewer. As far as what I would champion, it would just be a broad-based overview of increasing accountability of our spending. I mean, it's just, we could save so much money by looking at how we overpay for items. And as Sandy mentioned with her blue ribbon panel earlier, I like that idea, I like it a lot. I would maybe set up one of those specifically for spending type of issues.
Thank you. I championed the updating of our comprehensive plan. As I mentioned, that was one of the first acts I did when I became supervisor, was to, Ed Ravick and I wrote the resolution, Mike Priest proposed it, and it was passed unanimously to update the comp plan using smart growth principles. Then I led the working group, including all the Hershey entities, Todd, you were on it, Rick Russell, all the others, and we worked collaboratively to draft the community survey. We used SurveyMonkey. We went out and did 30 listening sessions. And our effort at grassroots community involvement won a Smart Growth Award for our efforts. After that, I also championed the regional bike and pedestrian connections study to help find low-cost connections to our wonderful bike and pedestrian paths, like our well-loved Jonathan Eschenauer path. So those are two issues I championed so far in my 6 years, and I'd like one more term.
Susan.
Thanks, George. I might offer that I've probably done more in the last 6 months than some supervisors have done in 6 years. It's been a very busy year helping the Downtown Hershey Association, helping the Middletown Road Coalition, and at the heart of what I've done and what I would continue to do would be to get people involved. The more the public is involved in the process of our local government, the better it is for everybody. And when I look at the collaboration that happens on the Downtown Hershey Association, people from all walks of life, young and old, all who want the same thing, all rowing in the same direction for the first time that I can remember living here, it's really energizing. And to make sure those people are informed, we hold information sessions so people understand what the comprehensive plan is about, what the Downtown Hershey Association master plan is about, and it's been really rewarding to get the public involved. Similarly, at the Middletown Road Coalition, here's a group of residents, which is growing every day, mostly homeowners association presidents, but those folks are getting involved to have a single voice with the township supervisors to make sure that their concerns are being heard. So I've attended their meetings, I've met with them, I built them a website, showed them how to use Facebook, and we're hoping to get more people involved in their cause.
And Marc.
We've already,
I apologize. I thought maybe he changed his mind. The next one has to do with special interests, and it starts with an observation and then poses a question. Noting that special interest money is now being infused to local elections. If elected, would you vote in the interest of the residents over special or corporate interests? Steve.
Yes, I would. And the reason you know I would is not because I'm up here telling you I would a month before I need your vote at an election I'm running in. The way you know I would do that is to look at my campaign finance records in every single race I've ever run. And that is to take money strictly from Derry Township, as it relates to township supervisor races, take money only from township residents, not from any corporate interests, not from any PAC set up to represent corporate interests. I don't know if you know how it works, like a corporation can't give directly to a candidate, but a corporation can set up a PAC, even name it after the corporation, and that corporate and those people can put the same money into the PAC. That money comes right to the same people it's going to go to. It's something we need to change nationwide. It's something that's wrecking our democratic republic, and it's something that I'll stop here and now.
Sandy?
Thank you very much. I, too, am very proud to be able to report that 100% of all our donations come from local residents. It's tremendously rewarding for me, as Steve can tell you every day when I come home and check the mail, and I open a letter with a $10 check from a senior citizen that says, I'm sorry, this is all I can afford on my limited income, but I strongly believe in what you're fighting for. That $10 means so much to me, and I will do everything I can to support that senior citizen and others like him. I think that outside influences bring up the appearance of impropriety. Whether or not they influence the decision, I think it creates that appearance, and that's something we should try to avoid at all costs.
Susan?
Thanks, George. Anybody sitting up here tonight, I know all three of the candidates, they're honest people. They're not going to vote for something because somebody gave them a $50 check or a $10 check. And if you believe for 1 minute that any one of your Derry Township Supervisor candidates would compromise their values by voting for something because somebody supported their campaign, then don't vote for them. But I'm here to tell you, I got money from outside Derry Township. I got them from friends who believe in what I'm doing, who've known me my whole life, who've written me letters, who've said, I believe in what you're doing and I support you. From my dad's best friend who lives in North Carolina who sent me a check because my dad can't and said, I'm proud of you, I believe in what you're doing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking money from outside of Derry Township, because as long as you're voting your conscience and you're being objective and you're being truthful and honest, that's all that matters.
Marc?
I agree. I have a 6-year track record, as I alluded to in my opening statement. The decisions speak for themselves. Every decision, every vote that I made for the past 6 years has been to promote one and only one purpose: betterment of Derry Township and the people that live within Derry Township. That's the beginning, the middle, and the end of every decision that I've made during this past 6 years. And I swear to you and affirm to you that if I'm privileged enough to be elected for the next 6 years, I will follow that same pattern of ethics.
Thank you. The next question is titled Open Space, and it reads, are you concerned about the loss of open space and farmland, for example, the Middletown Road development? Sandy?
Yes, I am very concerned about open space. And as I mentioned earlier, land use and the management of land use development and the better, wiser planning of that development is what really got me involved. I remember making signs where they were closing down the Parkview Golf Course with Ann Grossman and spray painting in my driveway. I remember Red Tail Ridge development and concerns residents had there. These have been going on for years, and I've always been very outspoken. That is, again, why one of the first things I did was to make that motion to update our comprehensive plan. We need to legally protect open space in our community so that we can preserve through conservation easements or the purchase of land, so we can preserve open space in our community.
Susan?
Sorry, it was my turn. Yes, I would be very much in favor of protecting as much open space as we can, because once that land is gone, it's gone. But I think we all realize that our community is growing and developing, and we have to meet the needs of our township. So I would suggest there's a balance. There's a balance between preserving the green space and growing to meet the needs of our township. And as supervisors, we have to be good stewards and really try to achieve that balance, to make sure that what we're doing meets the needs of the residents, that it's strategic, that we're being proactive in talking to developers. I mean, how often do we see things just sort of popping up piecemeal, and the road infrastructure isn't being addressed, and all of a sudden there's another similar kind of a establishment popping up? Is that really making our lives better? So as a supervisor, I would make sure that we would try to achieve that balance as best we can to enable our township to grow, to serve the needs of the residents, but also to try to preserve that beautiful green space that we all love.
Marc?
I think addressing the issue of open space is probably one of the greatest issues facing our township right now. People, we only get one chance at this. Once open space is compromised and it is developed, you will never see that open space again for all intents and purposes. And for that reason, any development of open space has to be thoughtful and deliberate and well planned. We need to make sure that the needs of the residents are addressed. Now, we're going to be updating our comprehensive plan in the next few months, and with that will come issues concerning rezoning land. I ask everyone out there in earshot to pay attention, to be active, to voice your concerns about particular parcels of land, swaths of land, and let the supervisors know your thoughts, your passion about how you feel we should develop Derry Township.
Steve?
Yes, as a founder and a former chair of the Derry Environmental Action Committee, it's safe to assume that open space, especially wooded open space, is very important to me. Critical to our clean water. As a civil engineer, I know that. We're starting to restore riparian buffers around all of our waterways in Derry. Yes, sometimes it looks a little messy, but guess what? It's keeping water cleaner, and it will pay off in dividends in the future. Two of the things that were said over here to my right, Susan expressed concerns about piecemeal development. I think that's what we usually call leapfrog development. Marc says our planning has to be deliberate. Well, unless we do this comp plan right and explore all of our rights in this process, we could be hooked into just what the municipality's planning code allows through zoning, and that is very reactive. Have we even looked at this comp plan? I haven't read the whole thing yet, but have we looked at a Citizens Bill of Rights? Have we looked at possibilities for home rule? I already mentioned bringing in ward-based representation, things that allow the citizens to claim more of their rights and control development.
Sam? Or did you already? Okay.
It's getting late, but I think I did.
The next question, the next card has two questions on it. Both of them are good questions. One involves the TIF, the second involves downtown issues. So what I'll do is I'll take the one on downtown issues, and if we have time, we'll get back to the TIF. The question is this, Susan. Derry Township has grown well beyond the village of Hershey. What consideration would you give to allocating greater resources throughout the township?
I'm sorry, you said one more time?
Derry Township has grown well beyond the village of Hershey. What consideration would you give to allocating greater resources throughout the township?
That's actually kind of an easy question to answer because while I live downtown and I love the downtown and I want to see it succeed like I'm sure you all do, as a supervisor you need to be good stewards of the budget and the resources for all of the township. There's a lot of work that has to be done along Middletown Road, a lot of work that has to be done out along Walton and Hershey Park Drive. So everybody needs to have those resources shared. This isn't just about protecting the downtown and making sure that that's developed properly. So if I understand the question well, it's just to be good stewards of our resources in the township to make sure that we're addressing the needs and concerns of everybody, whether you live in Palmdale or Rockledge or you live out in Stone Creek, and that's all Derry Township. So I don't know that I agree with the whole ward-based system because I really believe as a supervisor you should be representing everybody's needs, regardless of where you live. So to me, I think we should all five of us be paying attention to everything in the township and making sure that those resources are being distributed where needed.
Marc?
I agree. It's a sort of a no-brainer question, and as I mentioned at our last Board of Supervisors meeting Tuesday evening, we as supervisors have a duty and responsibility to represent everybody in all parts of our township equally. No one area deserves a monopoly on our township's resources. We have to evaluate issues individually on their own merits, but to make sure that our wonderful resources are available to all of our citizens, regardless of demographic, regardless of age, regardless of where they live. We represent everybody and have a duty and responsibility to do that to the best of our ability.
Steve?
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds great, and in theory, that's what happens. All 5 at-large elected supervisors are elected and represent all of us, and I truly believe all the past supervisors have done that, and including the current seated supervisors. That's not my concern. My concern is when I'm out talking to people, particularly those who are further from the downtown area, there's a perception, right or wrong, but it's a very common perception, that the downtown is the focus of all the planning, all of the tax increment financing. No one's talking about a TIF out near where I live. Why are we getting TIF? I'd like a TIF. So I think the best way to address that is to have a wards-based system where the representatives do come from certain areas, because it's just human nature. I'm more in touch with the people I walk my dog by and say hi to every day. And my family may go a month and never set foot downtown. Not that we don't like the downtown, but we live 3 miles from it, so why would we? And Sam.
Thank you. I, too, have found that in the various areas of the township, Rockledge, Palmdale, other areas off Middletown Road, certain communities feel like no one pays attention to them. And that's unfortunate. The great thing about the campaign is everybody's been out knocking on the doors, and we've been visiting all these areas, so we've all been out there at least to see. And I think there is some attraction to this concept of a ward-based representation, so that each area of the community would have special attention to that area. I also think it would, the more transparent we can be in sharing information, including information about budget issues, etc., that sharing that information will help people see the way we spend money and ensure that the supervisors and the staff are not in any way favoring one area of town or the other. But it is a concern, and it's too bad.
I'll leave this question just for you, Marc. How do you justify asking taxpayers across the state to fund improvements to our relatively wealthy and affluent township through state grants and funding, particularly in the downtown area?
Well, I think in terms of grants for walkability purposes, and sidewalks and bike paths, I think that it's a very important revenue stream for improvements in downtown and throughout the township for that matter. Those grants have been developed and are being offered for the betterment of the citizens of Pennsylvania. They're created to be used. So I don't really think that we should feel bad applying for grants for their intended purpose, especially if they're used wisely, if they're allocated wisely, and the decisions that are made to use them are intelligent, well-informed decisions.
Steve?
The short answer to the question is, I can't justify it. This is something that goes on. It's not a Derry problem, but it goes on, and it's a question of how are these grants allocated. We legalized gambling in the state, right? We all did it, and some of us, myself very reluctantly, but hey, we're going to get property tax relief, right? Aren't we getting that? I get about $230 reduction for having gambling in my state when I had none before. So who applies for grants and how they're allocated is problematic. Last year, the Hershey Trust got $25,000 of a gaming grant. The Hershey Trust. Now, it's a foundation, so it's not the whole $8.5 billion trust, but they probably don't need a whole lot of money. There's probably a better place that money could go. So, yeah, we should be competitive on them. We should go for them, and as a supervisor, I would apply for them. But the system that allocates money that way is problematic to me and always has been, nationwide.
Sam?
Thank you. I'm very happy to report that I've been able to bring in grant money by applying for grants that are available. Many of those help support, for example, our bike and pedestrian trails and looking for better connections, bringing the regional communities together. Another grant that I successfully wrote for several years is planting the shade trees that now are growing in our community. We volunteers, through the Tree Vitalized grant, volunteers have planted over 500 shade trees. And on the 24th, on Saturday, we'll be planting 50 more along Wood Road if anyone wants to come out and volunteer. And these trees help reduce our flooding. They increase walking because they provide shade, and they increase property values. I also wrote grants for rain barrels for residents to reduce flooding, the walk and bike to school days, and our smart growth, we got a national grant for technical assistance for our comprehensive plan.
Susan?
I don't think we should feel bad about applying for state funding. I think that means we're being smart. If we want to continue to maintain the level of services that we have in this township and grow even more, we don't want that to become a burden on the taxpayers. So the more we can look to leverage a diverse funding package from state funding, the better off I think we'll be. For example, without a DCED grant that I help facilitate for the Hershey Area Playhouse, that would not be standing in that barn right now. So you need funding to help make your township what it is and what you want it to be. So I think there's a perception sometimes of people who live here that the community is so rich we shouldn't take anything, or everything is here falling off the trees for us, and it's not. I'm here to tell you it's not. So I think the more we can be good stewards of what resources we have and look for additional funding sources, the more we can make this an even more wonderful place to live.
Steve, this question, I'll ask you to start. Says, there was a time when the supervisors vowed to not bring the tourists into downtown and work to route the tourist traffic around the village area. Now we have had more recent decisions made to mimic a small tourist town. I'll rephrase this because it has to justify this. Steve, how do you feel about this trend?
I think that given the comp plan we have and given the ordinances we have, things are developing the way they do, and that is to say haphazard, as somebody, I think Susan alluded to it earlier. They're developing where they develop, when they want to develop, and if somebody wants to put a Chipotle downtown, even if the ordinances don't allow it, if they have the financial wherewithal, they'll just change the ordinances and build the Chipotle downtown. So I don't think there's any concerted effort to if I'm reading the question right, to shuffle the traffic from the tourists downtown. I just think it's uncontrolled development, and we're starting to finally get a handle on that. I'd like to see this comp planning process wrap up pretty soon, though, so that we can get on with exploring the options that allows, and then finalizing goals that would allow us to most protect our rights, particularly against development.
Sam?
Can you repeat the question?
I can. It really has to do with traffic flow and tourism. There was a time when the supervisors vowed to not bring the tourists into downtown and work to route the tourist traffic around the village area. Now we have had more recent decisions made to mimic a small tourist town. How do you justify this to the residents?
Thank you. So I was not aware that there was a vow or a promise by prior supervisors, but I think that the issue doesn't have to be tourists versus townspeople. We can have a community that benefits both, and that we can both enjoy the wonderful blessings we have of living here in Derry Township. And tourists enjoy that as well as townspeople. It doesn't have to be an either or. I do believe that the transportation issue is very important, and that we involve the public in planning our transportation. I don't know that everything about the new intersection at Cocoa and Chocolate, for example, helps promote a walkable community as much as perhaps we could have if we had more community involvement.
Susan?
I can't imagine we wouldn't want our tourists downtown because they visit our businesses and our restaurants and they help make our community strong. However, we live in a tourist community. We all know when to go different ways during certain days of the year because you can't get down Chocolate Avenue. So this isn't really an issue of tourists versus residents. This is an issue of just looking at our road infrastructure. And we all know we struggle with getting from point A to point B. The comp plan calls for a strategic road infrastructure plan, and that's got to be a top priority for this new board in 2016, not just for the tourists, but for the residents, and not just for Chocolate Avenue, for the entire township. And I think having public involvement in that would be a wonderful thing.
Marc?
Everything is going to come down to planning, planning, and planning. We enjoy a symbiotic relationship with tourists. We benefit from them, but by the same token, there are some challenges that are associated with that, no doubt. It's all going to come down to proper, well-informed decision-making and planning. How do we accommodate those folks? I, for one, would like a walkable, a vibrant downtown that accommodates not just tourists, but our residents as well. Let's not forget about our residents. We need, as residents, to have a place to go, to eat, to hang out, to be entertained as well. And so that's an important consideration, and it's all going to come down on planning. And we have to do so intelligently, and we need to do so without financial risk to our taxpayers.
Steve? I apologize. I'm trying to sort through these questions and figure out which are the appropriate ones to answer. And I'm trying to listen. Well, sorry about that. This will be the last question over here. Is that we all time with that? Okay. The question is, under the township form, under the second-class township form of government, can we elect supervisors as each representing a particular area rather than the whole township? And the question is, if we could, how would you feel about it? I think it's a follow-up to Steve's statement that he's in favor of such a system. And we are, who are we at now? Susan? Okay, Sandy.
Thank you. And I did want to just thank everyone for coming out for this discussion. It's great to see so many folks here. Can you repeat that question?
Under the second-class township form of government, can we elect supervisors as each representing a particular area rather than the whole township? And the follow-up question would be, are you in favor of such a method?
Thanks. I am interested in the concept of a board-based supervisors because I think some of what I've experienced over the last 6 years is that we used to be a small town of maybe 10,000 people. Now we're a fairly large community of 25,000 people and living in different areas of the community. So I am intrigued by the concept of having geographic areas being represented by a particular supervisor. I find it an interesting concept. I'd love to hear more.
Susan?
I don't really see how that makes sense. I've lived all over the township. I've lived in Oakmont, Rockledge, Stony Run, South Point, now downtown. So I have an affection for everybody in Derry Township. And I think when you want a supervisor who's objective, who can make decisions on behalf of everybody in Derry Township. So I don't know that I agree with that. I think really the issue is to, as a supervisor, be more connected with your community. Find out what people want. For those who feel like they're on the outskirts and they're not a part of what's going on, make sure that they're involved. I've worked with the township to make sure that we get a weekly email out so people do know what's going on. They know when there are meetings that they can attend. So if you live in an area and you feel like there's an issue, you have an avenue to make sure that you can come to meetings and talk about it. You can reach out to a supervisor, you can reach out to a staff person, and how to know how to affect change in your area. So I think you just want to elect 5 supervisors who can keep the whole township top of mind and make objective decisions.
Mark?
Interesting concept. I'd be interested in hearing more. However, what happens when somebody from one part of the township would like to elect somebody from another part of the township because they think he or she is a really great candidate and will do a really great job to represent all of the residents of Derry Township. But because you're in that ward and that candidate's over in this ward, you won't have that opportunity. So it sort of would disenfranchise everyone outside that candidate's ward because the other people would be prohibited from electing somebody who could represent all of the residents of Derry Township. So I think that's a drawback to that approach. I mean, certainly worthy of consideration, but I see that as being problematic and limiting the rights of the people of Derry Township to exercise their ability to elect whomever they want, regardless of where that person lives in the township.
And Steve?
I'll answer the actual question. No, a second-class township cannot go towards base representation. We would have to become a first-class township. That's a criteria that has, I believe, 3 criteria, and we easily meet them. They're mostly population density type of criteria. Anvil Township did it not too long ago. I mean, now long ago, probably like 20 years ago. Swatera probably was a second-class township not too long ago, but guess what? They've got 24,000 people, about what we do, scattered out just like we do, and I think their citizens benefit tremendously from having the ward-based representation. I went to a few of their meetings when they were debating switching from wards to at-large. They were the most crowded township or borough council meetings I've ever been to. There was people lined with the walls. I'd say 60, 70, at least 70% spoke in favor passionately of keeping the wards. And as I mentioned before, there's 3 seats up for election in Swatera, and there's 6 candidates. 5 of them have come out vigorously pledging to restore the wards. Only one has said he does not want to.
That concludes the part of this meeting where we ask questions. There were 3 questions that I was unable to get to. I apologize for that. They were good questions. I thought they were somewhat duplicative of prior questions, so I skipped over those, but thank you for them. At this point, we will allow each candidate to make a 1-minute presentation regarding their candidacy. We'll start with this.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming this evening. It's very important that the community is involved in this process. I think you heard all 4 of us kind of agreeing an awful lot because the issues are pretty much the same. No one's for raising taxes and everybody else is against it. The issues are the same. We want to improve our traffic. We want to be smart about the growth. We want to make sure that we maintain a high level of safety in Derry Township. And as we look at any kind of police consolidation, that we make sure that we're not compromising our safety while we're saving money. So we all pretty much want the same thing. So you may be sitting there tonight and saying, so what's the big difference? Well, I'm here to tell you the difference is the approach. You want to find someone who's objective, somebody who can be the eyes and ears of the community, who can ask the questions that the average person asks, and then make decisions on behalf of that person. As a former reporter, I'm objective about everything. In fact, most of you probably didn't even know I was a Republican until a year ago, because that's how I operate. I make sure I am objective and I ask things that the average person wants to ask, and I get in there and get things done. So I appreciate you all coming this evening. I would encourage you to reach out to me if you have more specific questions. I'd be happy to answer them, and thank you for voting on November 3rd.
Mark?
One of the most frustrating things that I've found as a supervisor and supervisor candidate is the attempt to get people out and engaged in the issues that face our township. We stand at a crossroads right now in our township in a lot of different areas. A lot of different important issues have to be decided. Again, not the Heartland land use and development, but that's one of the biggest. Infrastructure, one of the biggest. And the candidates have to be evaluated in terms of their ability and willingness to look at issues objectively. And it's vitally important that you elect a candidate that will do so, free from conflicts of interest, And we'll ask the difficult questions and demand the right answers before making important decisions. That's all anybody wants. Reasoned, well-reasoned decisions, informed decisions. And I think I'm capable of doing that as proven during these past 6 years.
Steve?
Thank you. What we need and what everybody everywhere needs when they elect somebody to an office is leadership. Leadership is nothing more than being willing and able to stand up and say no, even to important people. I've come to this supervisor's board, this current board and previous boards, with many suggestions and complaints, if you will, and I've never gotten much out of them, so I decided to run to be on the board. I believe we've overpaid for infrastructure improvements multiple times. I've brought those to the board multiple times. I've seen nothing done to address it. A few years ago, we're at surplus now for the budget, and that's to the kudos to the supervisors who are here, but just a few years ago, we were $2 million in deficit, and I was invited here to come here and give suggestions. I sat here and watched department after department stand up and make suggestions that I didn't think were quite getting to the meat of it. I'll get to them. Sorry.
Sandy?
Thank you, George. Thank you again all for coming out and for discussing the issues here tonight. I think public dialogue and debate is one of the most important parts of our government, and we're very lucky to have such a great turnout tonight. Improving transparency is something that I'm very committed to. When I was first elected 6 years ago, I developed an email list, and many residents, and many of you here today, received that email. I try to include regular updates, especially about what's going to be on the agenda at upcoming meetings. I think it's important that folks know about what's on the agenda. Not that you have to come out to every meeting, but just so you can know in case you'd like to be involved. I also include all the great free events that our community has to offer. But I think improving transparency is always a good idea, and that we can do more to get the information out to the public. So instead of reading about a decision after it's already happened, people can participate before a decision is made. Thank you.
Elvira, before we conclude this meeting, is there anything else you'd like me to address?
No, you've done a great job.
All right.